Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Face2Face Podcast, and this is Victor DAFFRECE. As we reflect on the recent elections that have just happened in Malawi, today I am having Mr. Marcel Chisi, who is a human rights and governance activist, as well as the executive director for Active Youth Initiative for Social Enhancement, otherwise known as AYISE, an accredited election observer mission of the 2025 general elections. And of course, the national chairperson for Men for Gender Equality now, called Megan. He has extensive experience as far as analyzing democratic processes, the rights of citizens is concerned. And today, in this particular episode, we want to discuss about the political atmosphere of our country. Like I did mention in the preamble that we have just had an election. Mr. Chisi, thank you very much for gracing our podcast.
Thank you so much.
Today. How are you?
Not bad, and yourself?
I am very well, thanks. Now, to begin with, how would you describe the current electoral atmosphere in Malawi from a governance as well as a human rights perspective?
Well, it's one of the great learning points in our democratic process. Like you have rightly said, our organization, which is the Active Youth Initiative for Social Enhancement, AYISE, was accredited to observe this year's elections alongside many others. But it's not just this time. Even the 2020 elections, the fresh presidential elections, when there were no international observers, we were among few organizations that actually observed locally. So, that election was observed by local observers only, with a few international, so to say, that were already based here. So they had just sent their local contacts here to do the work on their behalf. Having observed the trends of this year's election, it is a very great learning point, like I've said, because you see, one is that there was a lot of preparedness on part of the Electoral Commission. When we talk about preparedness, we're looking at issues to do with whether electoral materials were supplied in all polling centers in good time. Maybe you may not have been there that time. I know about 3 to 4 elections before, where as near as Ndilande, they had a shortage of electoral materials. And people were saying, Ndilande is just at a walking distance to then the head office of Electoral Commission was in Blantyre. How come you have no materials just in a walking distance? But this one, the Electoral Commission made sure that all polling centers across the country has polling materials in good time. Do you know why that is important? Okay. So if, assuming you don't have a bottle of ink, indelible ink, that they use to identify that you have voted or not, automatically the voting will not start without that bottle of ink. So what will happen? The people who came early on assumption that they will go for other missions, their personal missions, they will say, wait a minute, I think I better go first, I'll come back. Reality, they may never come back. What does that mean? That voter has been disenfranchised. So you will find that affects the outcome of an election if materials are not supplied in good time. The second thing that has become a very serious learning point is the fact that we managed as a country to run a campaign free from violence. Before the elections, there was some bit of fear that maybe there will be a lot of bloodshed, maybe panga-wielding young people will be causing havoc here and there. Maybe there will be retaliation from across the country, from each party to the other. But when the campaign period opened, the campaign ran very smoothly. I was observing the campaign period, and I went as far as Ncheo. It was very exciting when we were in Ncheo. that there were these loudspeakers that people were mounting. There was a car mounted with MCP, team, a car with UTM, a car with DPP. All of them saying their own specific messages. Others are saying boma ndromweri sitisinta. Others are saying yeah boma lakanika tisinta. Others are saying yeah msanke msogoli wakuti ndi amene akuziwa za konza za chuma. Koma wose tu akudusana and panali bendewu iliyonse. To us that's democratic maturity. Because in the past you would expect people starting to provoke each other, and before you know it, fracas begins. So when you look at these trends, you can see that Malawians want clean politics, and in a majority of setups, sometimes it's the political leaders that incite violence. But the citizens want a peaceful atmosphere. And I think that's something we are already beginning to learn from this election.
So, Mr. Chisi, I want you to explicitly unpack the idea of electoral observation to a layman. I want you to make them understand what does the process of election observation entail.
Yeah, so election observation is not a one-off activity. It has 3 stages. We have the campaign period, which is the pre-election day period. So you observe how political players are campaigning. Was the landscape smooth for every political party to campaign in every corner of the country? I have observed, elections in other countries, and you would see sometimes that other political parties would be denied the opportunity to campaign in certain areas, as no gone those areas for specific parties. That was not the situation in Malawi. People were free to campaign in all corners. So that's a pre-election day observation. You observe the campaign period. Why that is important? If the other political parties do not campaign in other corners, automatically it will affect the outcome of an election. Automatically people will vote from one-sided view. They will not vote from a multiplicity of views. But I think from what you have seen, you could see a diversity. You have seen votes cast for different political parties across the country. You have seen votes for DPP in the north, in the remotest parts of other northern districts or central districts. You have seen votes of UTM cast in remotest parts. And likewise, you have seen votes of MCP cast across the districts in the country. What that means, and many other political parties, UDF and the PP and others, what that means is that all the political parties had the freedom to campaign anywhere in the country. So if they did not amass enough votes, it's not because they didn't have the opportunity to campaign. In fact, some political parties campaigned more vigorously across the country compared to others, and yet still they had to amass a certain level of voters. So that is a pre-election day campaign, observation. The idea is how leveled is the landscape. Because if the landscape is not leveled, it determines the outcome of an election. But in this election, the landscape, the political campaign landscape, in terms of ground level campaigning, was leveled. Maybe where it may not have been as much leveled, maybe it's the media campaign. Because a media campaign relies that your political party should have enough financial muscle to pay for airtime for certain televisions, for certain radios, so that you have as much media coverage. And maybe the national broadcaster also, to what extent did they fairly air all the political players in the game? So I think that's a pre-election day observation. Then we have election day observation. The election day observation is the most critical one, because we monitor or we observe. First, you have to deploy your observers and make sure that each of the individual observers, for example, our mission had almost 10 to 15 observers. It means each of the observers, and we were roving observers, which means we were not observing in one specific station. We were moving across districts. It means each of our observer team member had a center where they have to observe the opening of the ballot and the starting of the voting. Now, immediately that is done, they see all the processes, and then the lines have begun to flow. the roving observer leaves that center to now observe whether the other trends have been the same in all the centers. And you go to talk to the presiding officers. Did you open on time? Were all the election materials in place? Were there some problems? Is there security in the polling centers? Are people free on the lines? They are not feeling intimidated to be on the lines. Were there any political party materials displayed within specific, distance to the polling centers? All these things we are able to observe. Why? We want to make sure that the outcome, reflects the will of the people. Then, once you rove around the districts, before it's 4 p.m., 3:45, each of our observer mission have to go back to the center where they finally started with. So whether you are moving into, let's say our mission had almost Zomba, Chilazuru, Cholo, Mulanje, Chikwawa, and Blanta. So regardless of the distance, you have to make sure that by the time it is 3:45, you are at the center where you started. And that's another job. From this year's experience, that was a job. Because when you arrive at that center, you have now to observe the closing ceremony, where the boxes sealed with the right serial locks. The locks had serial numbers, 4 serial numbers, each lock. And how were they lifted from where they were to the classroom where they would be counted? Was their security properly managed? And in there, when you enter the counting place, before the locks were broken, did the presiding officers explain the process that we'll be going through? And then did they read the serial numbers and cross-check with the serial numbers that the party monitors were recording before the boxes arrived in the classroom? You know why that is important? It is possible to move with a box from outside and enter a classroom, and the box is swapped, and you think it's the same votes. So they had to make sure the serial numbers are the same. And I'm happy to say that there was no amount of threat that would reflect that either votes were swapped or what. There was nothing of that sort, because everyone's eyes was on the ballot box. And so things were that. Okay. So once you have observed the polling day, the final thing, the polling day, the final thing you will check is to make sure that each of the party monitors or, the key actors monitors, whether independent monitors, have received a tally sheet at that specific polling station. And I think this has been very critical. That's why this election, it was not possible for people to maneuver, whether people would choose to maneuver if such things exist, but you wouldn't maneuver. Because the first point of data is reflected on the polling station. On that one, each party monitor already receives. Your stream had so many competitors, each one has scored so much. And a copy of that paper is handed to the monitors of each political party to go with it back home. So which means already by the time all the polling centers had finished their work, by the time they are sending to the constituency tally center, automatically almost all the political players had known how they have fared, including with the figures, because they are reflected on the sheet, the results sheet that has come from the polling center. So where do you have the opportunity to alter the documents? So maybe the fear would have been from the constituency to the district and the district to the national. But even if things were to be altered at this level, still the original document, the original book of entry in this is the results sheet at the polling center. It is the control book, because it will still tell you where are you generating these figures, because at the polling center they don't exist. So why are they existing at another level? So I think by and large, you would see that you observe on the polling day those critical things. Then after that, you observe the national tallying, where you have to see how they are all being tallied from all the districts to the national. Are there adjustments that are being made that people complain about? How are they resolved? And so on. And once you have finished with the national tallying, the declaration of results. And after the declaration of results, you also observe the atmosphere. Are people generally satisfied? Both those who have lost and those who have won. Are they feeling satisfied that this could have been the result? Until the inauguration process. The inauguration is also very important because we also observe some dynamics around there to say, okay, does this reflect the will of the people? Are people generally happy with the outcome? So it's a lengthy process, and it's really a very exciting process.
Yes.
But suffice to say that as an observer mission, we are very convinced with the manner in which the Electoral Commission has managed the election.
So, Mr. Chisi, I want you to give us a picture from an observer's perspective. Take us through, if an observer observes an anomaly
Yes.
at a polling center,
Yes.
what's the process like to reporting that anomaly? I mean, walk us through that process.
Unfortunately, the observer does not act.
You just observe.
Our job is not to tell people you are wrong here, you are wrong here. No. There are polling staff there. There are party monitors there. Each polling center has party monitors. And then there are also civil society monitors in each of the centers. The observer is the linesman. I would think so. The monitor would be more of a referee. The observer is more of a linesman. He would flag out, but not in a manner that people see. The referee will act, but the observer will indicate that something has gone wrong somewhere. But he is not going to be the one to blow the whistle. So you observe. Our job is to observe. But mind you, our job at the end of an electoral process is to declare the elections free, fair, and credible.
Hey, now I wanted to ask you, what are the exact parameters that certify an election to be credible, fair,
Not to
and
be
fair?
free. The first starting point is to
free,
be free, then to be fair, then to be credible.
Yes. What are the parameters that define such?
Okay, so for an election to be seen to be free, it means people freely walked from their homes to the polling centers, and at the polling centers, they were free to walk properly without any form of intimidation to the polling booth and tick the person of their choice. So that is free. And I can tell you, no one can say this year's election, people were being intimidated, people were harassed, people failed to move out from their homes because there were threats outside. I don't think so. People were free. They came out in large numbers, sat on the lines, hours on end, and left after voting. Fair. Was the playing field leveled? Now we're looking at the political campaigning. Did it allow for all political players to campaign, at a fair level? Was the public media, like NBC, was it able to cover everyone, or those who can afford, in a manner that reflected that fairness? You would look at whether there was no intimidation from the state machinery. Always there is a government in power, and that government sometimes can use some form of intimidation. And I can tell you that we had situations where, in fact, even the presidential convoy was being jeered at. You understand that? Which means you wouldn't say that the government was intimidating. Maybe even the government in some cases was being intimidated. So in majority of settings, you would see a government being more agile, trying to put spanners and spoons here and there so that the other parties should not contest effectively. Some people would even arrest a contester on just a day before the polling day. We have seen that in Africa, elsewhere, where a contesting partner of a major party is arrested on grounds that are frivolous, and vexatious. So that is not fair, because then it makes the voter to be disenfranchised. Should we vote for this person when he is arrested? What if he will not come back? So it's the fairness. Now, credibility is about whether the figures that came out of that electoral process were not manipulated. In other elections elsewhere where we have observed, you could see that the outcome sometimes does not reflect what people voted for. And that is not credible. So even if you declare that person to have won, but if the figures were cooked up and the process of verifying, of accountability for the same is not there, that's not credible. So those are the parameters. So if we say the elections were free, it means people voted freely without intimidation. Fair, the landscape for campaigning was good for all political players. Credible, the outcome of an election reflected the will of the people and that no figures were cooked up, altered, or exaggerated, but largely they reflected the will of the people. And that's why we are also happy that the Election Commission took its time to, to verify all the tally sheets that came from the district centers before making a declaration. People were a little bit impatient, or declare the results now, declare. No. If they declare quickly without verifying, there could be some additional problems that sometimes, the people who are tallying are also individuals. Sometimes they might make an error that is very significant, not because they wanted to make an error, but because they are humans, they can err in calculating. And if that adds up to somebody can challenge on that basis. So they have to make sure that all the figures are properly aligned and that they reflect what actually comes from the polling centers. So that adds to the credibility of an election.
So yeah, we are in a democratic dispensation, and after 5 years, we will hold another general elections. Let us speak in futuristic term, managing expectations. In such a tense period as an election period, how should political leaders, or I should say players in an election, or candidates, and of course the citizens inclusive, manage their expectations regarding election outcomes? How can they manage their anticipations?
Yeah, so you see, in an election, there are always winners and there are always losers. And always sometimes people win and those who lose feel hurt. Sometimes the winners sometimes are the ones who are even overexcited and provoke others who have lost. So I think managing expectations is very important. Every political leader has to be an agent of peace. And there is Malawi beyond the elections. In fact, the elections is one way of determining how we will be led in the next 5 years. So it's important that political players preach peace to their citizens, that when you win graciously. Don't provoke those who have lost. Why you don't have to provoke them? Because these are already bitter, they are angry, they are frustrated, and any slight provocation can be tantamount to a fracas. So if you have won, you win graciously, celebrate graciously. And those who have lost also should accept defeat graciously, not trying to bring in elements that deliberately precipitate violence. That is not also acceptable in a democratic society. So I think it's from each of the political players to ensure that their supporters maintain peace at all levels.
So we are living in a digital era whereby information sharing is quite rampant. At the tip of your fingers, you get updated, and we have had unofficial results circulating on social media. Each and every political player projecting numbers that are seemingly advantageous to their camp, so that they should shape a certain kind of narrative. I want you to tackle on the risks. What are the risks? What risks do arise now when people react too quickly to preliminary information? And how can public confidence in the process be maintained?
You see, first we need to condemn practices of circulating fake and preliminary information. I'm calling fake because if people are honest with themselves, let them get the results from all the polling centers, summarize them, and be honest and say, this is what we have collected. But where certain figures are manipulated, the challenge in that is that sometimes people might feel that is the truth. By the time they will realize it's not the truth, a lot of damage has been done. We have seen some political, some media circulating information that a member of parliament in such a constituency has won. And people would stand to believe. And only 2 hours later to be told, no, he has actually not won. And we have seen more than 20 of such cases where people were declared from all the political players, both in government of the time and in opposition. People were circulating, oh, this one has won, only to find that 8 hours later, no, in fact, he has not won. Or in this constituency, this one has won, or to find that hours later he has not won. That is dangerous for democracy. Because then when the Electoral Commission is announcing things to the contrary, that's where people manipulate and say, no, it means the Electoral Commission is lying. We were told ours has won by our leaders. So it means the Electoral Commission is the one who is lying. And yet the legal authority to manage elections in a country is vested in the Electoral Commission. You can circulate your figures, but those are unofficial. And until they are verified by the Electoral Commission. So I think what Malawians should begin to appreciate from this time going forward is that whatever is going to circulate is not anything official. Whether it favors you or it favors your enemy, it is not official. What is official, according to the law of Malawi, or according to the laws of Malawi, is that which the Electoral Commission will announce. That is the official result. It may be in tandem with what you circulated. It may not be in tandem with what you circulated. But what the Electoral Commission announces is what the formal position of the electoral process will be. So I think that's what Malawians should begin to appreciate from this time going forwards. Because now with the information technology, people can take a tally sheet, for example, and even alter figures on the tally sheet using the technology, and then circulate it. And then it creates a very different atmosphere. And people start to believe in that tally sheet, which somebody has just authored. That one is your tally sheet. It's not an official tally sheet. The official tally sheet is that which the Electoral Commission will avail to the citizens of Malawi. Please note that the Electoral Commission is not a composition of one political party. Because maybe Malawians don't know. It is a composition of all key political players. They choose representatives to sit in that commission.
As commissioners.
As commissioners. So when you look at the Electoral Commission as a very independent organization, because your own commissioner will not allow your own political party to lose when they know you are winning. Then they will come out and say, no, I recuse myself because I think there is injustice there.
Makes sense, yeah.
So sometimes we are trying to put a picture that the Electoral Commission is biased by our own views of fears. But that's why the law was very clear. They made sure that the chairpersons of the Electoral Commission, apart from chairing commissioners from various political players, is chaired by a judge.
A judge, yeah.
You see, the beauty with our colleagues from the legal fraternity is that they are not moved by your reactions. You can be angry, they will look at you because they go by the law. You can cry, you can be frustrated, you can be what, but they will go by the law. They will say, what does the law say? And they will exactly do according to the law. Whether he's your brother, whether you are the one who appointed that judge, but that judge will act according to the law. And I'm very happy that by and large, our chairpersons of the Electoral Commission, by and large, have really been very, very independent in the way they have managed the elections. Except that political players, so you see this maneuvering of tally sheets outside, is that by the commission? It's people. Now people doing their own things and then wanting to render the Electoral Commission not credible. Because if the Electoral Commission announces things contrary to what they have been circulating, what will you say? You will say, the Electoral Commission, we knew is biased. It's wrong. It is wrong. Malawians should stop circulating fake news to their own advantage. Let the legal authority, which is the Electoral Commission, make a determination. And if you are aggrieved, the courts are there to your rescue, and they will act in that direction.
Mr. Chisi, let's talk about the citizen agency and accountability. For ordinary Malawians, the citizens of this country, what can they do to safeguard the integrity of an electoral process?
No, I think the citizens have tried, by and large. You see, all the elections that we have observed, like I've said, our last point of observation is to see to it how the counting is done and safeguarding the results. Do you know what time most centers finished counting this year? Using the current system that is required for you to make sure you don't make any mistake at a polling center, making sure that all the necessary forms are filled, making sure that the counting, recounting, all that. Most centers were finishing counting at 4 a.m. And all monitors were still awake from all the political parties. Even those who clearly saw that their candidates were losing by far margin. But they wanted to make sure that they give the right result to their candidates, to say, no, my dear, I monitored and we have lost. Because that's very important. If you are not there, you will say, no, maybe because I was not there to monitor, maybe the other results are the ones that they took from us. So everyone safeguarded their vote through their monitors. Some of the independent candidates did not even provide enough upkeep for their monitors. But the monitors still kept the faith and they monitored. So I think in terms of Malawians of goodwill, I think the Malawians have become mature and they have made sure they safeguard their vote and they monitored the process until they were convinced. They were leaving the polling center at a time they now have a results sheet, which reflects the will of the people at that polling center before it is amalgamated with the other polling centers to the constituency tally center.
Yeah, prior to the elections, one of the issues that really stood out was the growing cause for the resignation of the MEC chairperson, Anabi Manja, and of course the CEO, Andrew Mbesi, citing that one of the players, or among the players of these elections, were citing that these two individuals occupying their respective positions would mean that there was going to be the possibility of bias. That was another scenario. Another scenario was an issue to do with the gadget, Smartmatic. There was more skepticism as exercised by some players in these elections. Now, you being an observer of these particular elections, what's your assessment? Did you see the Malawi Electoral Commission proving whosoever was suspicious wrong?
You see, this year's elections have proven not only about the Electoral Commission, even about the political players. You remember that there were so many theories that in Malawi you cannot amass 50 plus 1 as single party. But it's possible also that a single party can amass 50 plus 1. Yeah. It's possible. It depends whether you have done enough campaign, but also whether you are speaking to what people are looking for. So it's also possible. So which means that theory has been challenged. You can have a candidate who can get 50 plus 1 without forming a coalition. It's also possible. But also, with regard to the theories surrounding the MEC chairperson and the CEO, whether they would be compromised. Now, the challenge in this country is that if people were not going to act with integrity, then every person is compromised. Even if you were to get me, there would be still reasons enough to say Mr. Chisi is compromised. You understand? But like I've said, chairpersons of electoral commissions often are judges from the High Court, and they go according to law. And sometimes it's not them who are at fault. It's the political maneuverings around them that render them either looking like they are not, they are not independent, when actually they are very independent. Why do I say this? For example, the issues you raised earlier on, people circulating tally sheets that are, altered or worked differently and saying ours has won. Now, if the Electoral Commission chair says, no, this one has not won, when you have already told the masses that yours has won, what does that tell about the chairperson? People feel, no, she's not independent. Our political leaders told us ours has won. Why is she declaring them not to have won? So you will see it's the political maneuverings that are actually creating lack of independence among that. Because otherwise, because somebody is related to person A, person B, then they may not act with integrity. That theory does not act to all people. Particularly lawyers do not act in that way. They act according to the law. So I think that has really been proven wrong. In fact, this election, by and large, preparation, excellent. But when I talk preparation, all matters aside, not that there will not be pockets of small issues, but when we talk about elections that are not properly planned, there are elections elsewhere we have monitored across this African continent, where there is a systematic lack of materials in a particular area. Systematic. Which means you find that area, this paper is not there, this form is not there. In all the polling centers of a particular area, what are you doing there? That's impartiality, because you already are disenfranchising voters in that area. That was not the case. Every polling center had equal or enough materials. If there were small issues, maybe those were even resolved without delays. So I think that concept was challenged. That you can still be seen like you are not independent and still act independent. But also on this mathematic, I think the courts also came to the rescue. The fears from the political players were probably genuine on this one. Genuine because in a world of technology, we have not yet reached a level of maturity where we trust that the transfer of data would exactly reflect what people had voted for. I think that was the fear of the people. And therefore, when the courts said you will transfer the data using your machine, but the actual determination will be based on what has been reflected on the hard copy from the polling centers to the constituency tally, to the district tally, to the national tally. That was a good decision. And I think that's why I've also said today and also in the past that even though sometimes people have questions with our judiciary, but our judiciary has rescued this country multiple times. In 2003, the judiciary rescued us from attempts for the third term. They rescued us, from those attempts. And then there were also several times in the electoral processes that the judiciary have rescued this country from political maneuverings that would have put the country in a quagmire. So I strongly believe that the decision by the courts that to allow Electoral Commission to manage this election using electronic devices, but also accompanied by the hard copy. The hard copy, this one, don't play with it. Because it's very clear that if you manipulate the figures at another level, we will simply go back to the polling center. Can we get your result sheets? And then you simply add the result sheet from all the polling centers. You have the figures already at that constituency level. There's no argument. So I think by and large, the Electoral Commission adhered to the law as was guided by the courts also. And I think it's in our observation that the combination of electronic device coupled with the hard copy type of reporting pacified the doubts that were there about possibility of manipulation of the figures.
Now, generally speaking, looking at MEC's way of handling these elections or the whole electoral process from registration, voter verification, receiving political party nominations to the polling and, of course, announcement of the winner. To you, in your own assessment, what stands out as progress? And, of course, where are the gaps in transparency?
You see, I can tell you without a possibility of contradicting myself, that from the court ruling, the presidential reference court ruling, it set up a new direction for electoral commissions. I have observed the elections since 1999. Previously, we observed the elections under the Church NGO Consortium. In those years, we were still very young. We couldn't be accredited by ourselves. But we were accredited under the Church NGO Consortium. We observed elections. You could see that the previous elections were not having the same standards as the elections now. The elections now, you could see the transparency at work. even the way the presiding officers were managing things, you could see the transparency at work. The nomination process, you could see the transparency at work. I don't see an area where I have doubts that because of this. Maybe, I don't know what we can do for the future. For example, while it's a democratic right that every citizen can contest for presidency, but you see, we, a small country, we had 17 aspirants. You know, whether some aspirants meant it or what, but sometimes you clearly see yourself that you would be better off, forming a coalition with others than standing by yourself. So maybe is it that the money, 10 million, was very little, that everyone could afford it? Is it that they should raise that threshold? And if they raise it, will they not be stopping a very credible person who would run a country but he does not have the kind of money? So sometimes it's becoming a bit worrisome that maybe no safeguards are put in terms of, how genuine people should be, because otherwise during counting, we had to paste 17 areas, because you have to still put them there. And then people start allocating votes. After first counting the total number of votes in a ballot, comparing with the total figure that was said to have voted at that place, then after that is done, then you now begin to allocate to each candidate in that. That's why the processes were coming up to 4 a.m., 5 a.m. Because for you to do that, for each ballot box, the president, the councillors, it could take a lot of time. So I can tell you that there is a lot of transparency that is being achieved in the current elections compared to elections before the presidential referendum. I think now people are beginning to be more transparent and more accountable. Even the electoral commissions themselves, from the presidential referendum to this one, you can see that they have acted in a manner that people are satisfied that they have done a good job.
Achisi tifuna tikambiraneso nkhani ya kukhazikitsa mitima ya anthu pansi. Ndimafuna mukambeza udindo umene atola nkhani kapena kuti media komanso mafumu angakhaleso anthu azipembedzo ali nawo pokhazikitsa anthu mitima yawo pansi pamene mwina kudikirira malizati komanso malizati abwera kuti ndi udindo wawo otani kuphatikizaponso anthu inu amabungwe omwe si aboma. Ndi udindo wanu ndi otani?
Ife amabungwe amene saboma tiyambire kumeneko tili kale kwabwino chifukwa ntchito ya ife sitingamalimbikitse anthu tazikangana mziko. Ntchito yathu ndi kudzesa mtendere. Ntchito yathu ndi kuonesesa kuti ufulu wa anthu usakuphwanyidwa, ufulu wa azimayi, ufulu wa ana. Chifukwa kukakhala violence kapena kukakhala zigwirikiti, amene amavulala kwambiri ndi azimayi ndi ana, ndiye kuti ufulu wawo waphwanyidwa. Komanso mtendere ukasowa, chuma chimalowa pansi. Ndiye ife ntchito yathu ngati amabungwe ndikuonesesa kuti tikumemeza kuti aliyense aonesese ngati pali kusiyana maganizo, zinthu zithe mwamtendere. Kumbali ya media ndi kumene tiliso ndi ntchito, not mainstream media. Mainstream media chabwino, koma yambiri mainstream media is properly guided by the Communications Act. Amadziwa kuti they cannot air things that are offensive, things that would excite violence, incite violence, and I don't think they would do that. So by and large, they are guided by the media ethics. Where we have problem is the social media. Because social media, an incident has happened in Chikwawa. Maybe a particular party is quarreling with another party, over certain situations, and that becomes viral. What does that do? It ignites a similar fire elsewhere. And that's how violence becomes protracted. So I think it is a citizenly responsibility to make sure that we do not promote or incite violence, either while people are waiting for elections or after the results of an election. It is also the responsibility of political leaders and political players, the language they use. Others would threaten others, and such type of language sometimes brings disunity, brings violence in the country. And I think that should not be encouraged among the players. Religious leaders should also play a role. They are like us, civil society. We work for peace and we work for human rights protection. And I think they do the same. And I think they should encourage in their churches, in their mosques, to keep people at peace, to maintain calm, so that if there is misgivings, let the legal processes take its course and not take the law in their own hands and start fighting, damaging other people's property, or doing things that jeopardize national peace.
Pamamaliziro Chisi ndimafuna ndimve ndimanga yanu kuti there's a trend that has been observed in these particular elections. The newcomers as contestants pazisankho izizi bapezeka kuti ukamva uku apemphero mvula wapeza ukasikisi kupita uku anyamata asikana apeza kujeni kati mavoti tauti ngapo zikupeza kuti these underdogs, these newcomers have managed to collect a little bit of a share of these votes across the country. I want you to give us an interpretation. Kuti zimene zikuthanda uzanji pamene pali ma strong contenders atatu DPP, MCP komanso UTM, and then ubwera munthu oti mwina campaign yomwe sanapange nawo sanayende nkomwe koma kupeza kuti wapeza 5 zikuthanda uzanji zimene zicha.
You see, people are looking for leaders, and there are times that even those who have won should know that they have won not because of the followers of their political party. They have won because of disillusionment that has happened. So you may be of a particular political party, but disillusioned in your party, and you feel, I still have to vote for that one. So you are not a member of that party, but you have voted for that party, which means that's what we want, because that means the winner is representing the views of all the citizens of the country. But that should also be a warning that if people begin to think that way, that's democratic maturity. It calls for leaders to perform. If you don't perform, even those who have won, if they don't perform to the expectations of the people who voted them, then they should know that come the next election, the same people will turn to the other side, maybe to a new person altogether, or to somewhere else. So it's very important that the leaders should understand that this election is one of the very decisive elections where people have voted what they were looking for. And then secondly, even on MPs, we have seen people who we never expected would lose, have lost. What does that tell? And we have also seen in other constituencies where a particular party that is very dominant, and at presidential level, the president has amassed more votes, but at parliamentary seat, maybe the parliamentary person has lost to a particular political party. Which means people this time were not voting for a political party only. They were voting for that specific individual. You could be an MP for this political party that is popular in that area. But if people see you differently, you could lose. You could be an independent member, but if people see you differently, you could lose. So I think it's a very decisive election. It points to the democratic maturity that Malawians are getting into.
Mr. Chisi, it's been a pleasure having you on Face2Face Podcast.
Thank you so much.
Nakondera kuti tinacheza ndipo tizikhala kuita nani pakapezeka ndithu media yosiyana yoti inuyo muthakwikirapo ndimanga. Zikomo kwambiri. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a wrap. My name is Victor DAFFRECE, and this is Face2Face Podcast. Today I had Mr. Marcel Chisi, who is a human rights as well as a governance expert, as well as the executive director for AYISE. If you're watching this video on YouTube, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button. Once again, Victor DAFFRECE. I'm out of here.